At 6 a.m., a deputy knocked, but when he read who filed the eviction, his face changed forever. My own parents stood across the street, watching me lose my home. Mom said, "You should have listened." Dad said, "Pack up." I didn't scream. I asked one simple question. The deputy checked the papers, paused, and everything shifted. What he found on that top line changed everything, for all of us. The pounding started before my brain did. Deep metallic knocks that didn't sound like a neighbor and didn't sound like a delivery. It sounded like authority, like someone had decided I didn't get to sleep in my own house anymore. I sat bolt upright in bed, heart already sprinting. For a second, I didn't know what day it was. Then I saw the faint gray light leaking through the blinds and the clock on my nightstand. Just after 6 a.m. I pulled on a sweatshirt and stepped into the hallway, careful with my footsteps out of habit, like the house might wake up and scold me for existing. The pounding came again, followed by a male voice. "Sheriff's office, open the door." My hands went cold instantly. I didn't rush. I didn't hesitate. I moved the way you move when you've learned that panic makes you sloppy, and sloppy becomes a story other people tell about you later. I flipped the porch light on and looked through the peephole. A deputy sheriff stood on my front step in a tan uniform with a black vest, one hand holding a clipboard of papers. Behind him, his patrol car sat at the curb with its lights off. Then I saw them across the street, half in shadow. My parents stood near the neighbor's mailbox like spectators at a parade. My mother's arms were folded. My father's hands were in his coat pockets. They weren't surprised to see a deputy on my porch. They were satisfied. I opened the door with the chain still on. "Ma'am," the deputy said, calm but firm. "Are you Tessa Ward?" "Yes." He glanced down at the papers. "I'm Deputy Romero with the county sheriff's office. I'm here regarding a writ of possession. It's an eviction order." The word eviction hit my chest like a shove. "This is my house," I said. My voice didn't shake because I didn't allow it. "There has to be a mistake." Deputy Romero didn't react. He'd heard that sentence 100 times. "Ma'am, I'm not here to debate ownership. I'm here to execute a court order." I stared at the page in his hand. My name was printed on it in clean black letters like I was a tenant who'd missed rent. Not the person who paid the taxes, replaced the roof shingles, and planted the tree out back with my grandfather when I was a teenager. My mother called from across the street loud enough to carry. "You should have done what family asked." My father added, voice flat like a verdict. "Pack. This is happening today." Deputy Romero's eyes flicked toward them, then back to me. He lowered his voice. "Do you have somewhere you can go?" The question wasn't kind. It was procedural, but it still made my stomach twist. "I'm not going anywhere," I said. "Not until you show me what this is." He angled the paper so I could read. There it was in bold. Writ of possession. A case number, a court seal, a judge's signature I didn't recognize. I pointed to a line near the top. "Who filed this?" Deputy Romero hesitated just long enough to tell me the answer mattered. "The plaintiff on this case is," he stopped mid-sentence, looked back at the paperwork, then looked at me again, and his face changed. Not shock, not pity, recognition, like someone had just realized the villain was standing in plain sight. He cleared his throat. "It was filed by Diane Ward and Mark Ward." My parents didn't even pretend to be embarrassed. My mother's chin lifted like she was proud of the line being read out loud. I felt something go still inside me. A clean, cold stillness. Because if the plaintiff was my parents, that meant they hadn't just threatened me. They'd gone into a courthouse and turned themselves into the story's reasonable side. And if there was a writ, it meant they'd already gotten a judgment without me. "When was this case filed?" I asked, keeping my voice level. Deputy Romero checked the page. "Judgment was entered last week." Last week. I'd been here last week. I'd gone to work, come home, watered the plants, slept in this bed. I hadn't been in court. I hadn't been served anything. Where was I served? I asked. Deputy Romero looked down again and his pause was heavier. He ran his thumb down a section. Service address listed as 128 Maple Terrace. My brain refused the reality. Maple Terrace was not my address. It was the little rental my parents had lived in 15 years ago before they moved up. The place with a cracked driveway and a mailbox that leaned like a tired tooth. I hadn't set foot there since high school. "That's not my address," I said calmly. "That's not where I live." Deputy Romero's jaw tightened. "It's what's on the return of service." My mother called out again, sweeter now, like she was performing for the deputy. "We tried to do this the easy way, Tessa. You forced us." I didn't look at her. "Can you show me the return of service?" I asked the deputy. He flipped the page and angled it so I could read. A line stating service had been completed, a signature, a date, a time, and a description that made my skin go cold. Substitute service accepted by adult female occupant at Maple Terrace. My parents had used an address they controlled and claimed someone accepted papers on my behalf. I slowly looked across the street. My mother stared back at me with a calm, practiced face, like she'd already rehearsed how this day would go. And in that moment, I understood the real purpose of the eviction. It wasn't just to humiliate me. It was to rush me, force me to pack, leave, lose control of the house. Because if I didn't get a judge to stop this, a deputy sheriff would legally remove me from the home my grandfather left me. This house was my grandfather's, I said to Deputy Romero. He left it to me. He held the papers tighter like he hated being the delivery system for other people's cruelty. Ma'am, if you believe the court order was obtained improperly, you need to contact the court immediately and file an emergency motion. I nodded once. I understand. There's one more thing, he said. This writ authorizes same-day possession. My stomach tightened. Without a judge's stay, I have to clear this house by noon. I didn't stand there arguing. Arguing would have given my parents what they wanted, a scene, a story, a reason to say I was unstable. So I did the only thing that mattered. I built a record. I asked Deputy Romero to hold the paperwork steady while I took clear photos of every page. The case number, the court seal, the signature line, the service address, the return of service language. Then I stepped back inside, shut the door gently, and slid the deadbolt into place. Through the window, I could still see my parents across the street, watching like they were waiting for me to start throwing boxes onto the lawn. My mother had that same satisfied stillness she used to wear when she thought she'd cornered me into obedience. I grabbed my wallet, my keys, my phone, and one small fireproof pouch from the drawer where I kept the boring things that become life or death when other people decide to get creative: my deed copy, my grandfather's probate distribution letter, the property tax statements, and the homeowner's policy in my name. Then I called the courthouse clerk's office. Civil Division, a woman answered. I have a writ of possession for an eviction, I said. I was never served. I need to know how to request an emergency stay and set aside a default. I gave her the case number. She typed, longer this time. Ma'am, this is an unlawful detainer filed by Mark and Diane Ward. Default judgment entered last week. I was never served. The service address is Maple Terrace. That's not my address. I see the return. It says substitute service accepted by an adult female occupant. That would be my mother. What do I do right now? File an emergency motion to stay enforcement and a motion to vacate the default. The deputy says he has to clear the house by noon. Come to the courthouse as soon as we open. Bring identification, proof of your address, and proof of ownership. And ma'am, don't delay. If the writ is executed, it becomes harder. I grabbed the pouch and walked back to my front door. Deputy Romero was still on my porch. My parents were still across the street. I'm going to the courthouse, I told the deputy. I'm filing an emergency stay. He nodded. That's what you need to do. My mother called out. You can file whatever you want. It's already done. Deputy Romero's jaw tightened at her tone, but he didn't respond. He looked at me. Ma'am, I'm not allowed to give legal advice, but I can tell you this. If you get a signed stay order, you call our civil unit immediately. They'll instruct me not to execute. He wrote the number on the corner of a card and slid it toward the crack in the door. My father spoke louder. Pack your things. Don't make this ugly. I met his gaze across the street. You made it ugly when you lied to a judge. My mother's face tightened, but she smiled anyway, like she thought my words didn't matter anymore. I closed the door and left through the back, walking around the fence to my car without having to pass them. On the drive to the courthouse, the sky brightened into that pale morning color that makes everything look harmless. My hands were steady on the wheel. My mind wasn't. I kept thinking about Maple Terrace, about my parents signing for papers meant for me and then pretending the court had served me. About how easily a lie becomes a judgment when you don't know you're supposed to show up. When the courthouse doors opened, I was already there. The security guard waved me through fast when I said I had an eviction being executed today. At the Civil Division counter, I slid my ID and the writ photos forward. I need an emergency stay and a motion to vacate. I was never served. The service address is wrong. The clerk typed my case number and frowned. You're at this address? No. That's my parents' old place. I've never lived there as an adult. He pulled up a scanned proof of service form. The signature was a scribble, but the printed name underneath was neat. Diane Ward. She signed for it, I said quietly. She is the plaintiff, and she accepted service on my behalf at an address I don't live at. He stared at the screen a beat longer than needed. Then he printed the service form and slid it under the glass. Highlight that, he said low. It matters. I also own the house. I slid out the deed copy and the probate distribution letter. The clerk looked at the deed and blinked. Then typed faster. Your parents filed this as landlords. They're claiming you're a tenant holding over. He clicked to another exhibit, a one-page rental agreement with my name typed at the top, my parents' names under landlord, and a signature at the bottom that was supposed to be mine. It looked like someone had tried to copy my handwriting from an old birthday card and got bored halfway through. They forged it, I said. The clerk didn't say yes. He said, if you want the judge to see this today, you need to file your emergency motion now. He handed me a packet through the slot. The words emergency motion to stay sat at the top like a life preserver. What judge? I asked. Judge Halpern is assigned. Can I get in front of her this morning? He hesitated, then glanced toward an interior door marked judicial assistant. I can try. But you need to understand. I understand, I cut in gently. If I don't get a stay, a deputy clears my house by noon. He took my packet for a stamp. The stamp came down hard, thunk, ink bleeding into paper. Go to Department 14. Ask the assistant for an emergency slot. Then, quieter, Ms. Ward. If that deed is recorded in your name, your parents' eviction case has a standing problem. Judges don't like standing problems. In the hallway outside Department 14, I sat on a wooden bench and filled out the motion with slow, clean handwriting. Every line deliberate. When I reached the section for supporting evidence, I listed exactly what the record showed: wrong address, plaintiff signed service, forged lease, recorded deed in my name. I slid my packet under the assistant's window. She read the first page, then the second. Then her eyes stopped on the proof of service. She looked up at me. You're saying the plaintiff accepted service on behalf of the defendant? Yes. She stared at me, then stood without a word and disappeared through the door behind her. I waited, hands folded, breathing steady, listening to muffled voices. When she returned, she held my packet like it was suddenly heavier. Judge Halpern will see you, she said. But I need to warn you. Your parents attached one more document to their filing. And if it's what it looks like, this isn't just an eviction. My stomach tightened. What document? A deed. A recorded deed that claims the house was transferred back to them. My body went cold but my face stayed still. Transferred back to them, I repeated. It's in the court file as an exhibit. You'll see it when you're in front of the judge. I followed her into Department 14. My parents were near the front with their lawyer, silver hair, calm posture, the kind of attorney hired so the court assumes you're the reasonable one. My mother wore a concerned expression. My father stared straight ahead. They looked prepared. When my mother spotted me, she gave a small sad smile like she was about to perform compassion. I didn't return it. The bailiff called the case. Judge Halpern took the bench and immediately looked down at the file with a frown that told me she'd already seen something she didn't like. Ms. Ward, you're the defendant. And you're appearing without counsel today? Yes, Your Honor. Tell me why I should issue an emergency stay. I slid my packet forward. Because I was never properly served. The proof of service shows the plaintiff accepted substitute service at an address I do not live at. The address is not mine, and the plaintiff signed the service form. Judge Halpern's eyes narrowed. Plaintiff signed the service form. She looked at my parents' attorney. Counsel, is that accurate? Mr. Pike stood. Your Honor, service was completed according to statute. Substitute service is permitted. Judge Halpern lifted a hand. Don't recite statute at me. Did your client sign as the adult female occupant who accepted substitute service? Mr. Pike hesitated. Yes, Your Honor. Mrs. Ward accepted service at the address listed as Ms. Ward's last known address. Judge Halpern turned to me. Is Maple Terrace your last known address? No. I have not lived there as an adult. My driver's license, tax bills, and utility bills reflect my current address. I slid my ID and a recent utility bill forward. Judge Halpern scanned them, then looked at my mother. Mrs. Ward, why did you accept service on behalf of the defendant at an address that is not her residence? My mother's lips trembled into practiced sorrow. Your Honor, we've tried everything. She's been unstable. She stopped answering us. We didn't know what else to do. There it was again. Unstable, a label meant to make the court stop asking uncomfortable questions. Judge Halpern didn't blink. That's not an answer. You either knew where she lived or you didn't. My father leaned forward. We were just trying to protect the property. Protect it from whom? Judge Halpern asked. My father didn't answer. My mother lowered her gaze like a saint. Mr. Pike stepped in. Your Honor, the plaintiffs own the home. The defendant has been refusing to leave. Judge Halpern's tone tightened. I've reviewed the exhibits. One of them is a deed. She lifted a single page from the file. Exhibit C is a recorded quitclaim deed purporting to transfer the property from Tessa Ward to Mark and Diane Ward. Recorded 2 weeks ago. She looked at me. Ms. Ward, did you sign a quitclaim deed transferring this property to your parents 2 weeks ago? No. Mr. Pike, Your Honor, we have a notarized deed on record. Judge Halprin's eyes snapped to him. I didn't ask you. She looked at me again. You're saying that deed is fraudulent? Yes, and I can prove I was not present for any notarization. I was at work that day and my employer has access logs. Judge Halprin's pen stopped moving. Access logs. Badge entry and security camera logs. Time-stamped. Mr. Pike's expression tightened. Your Honor, this is turning into a title dispute. Judge Halprin's gaze hardened. This is not a probate matter right now. This is an unlawful detainer filed by people claiming to be owners, supported by a deed the defendant says she never signed, combined with a service return signed by the plaintiff at an incorrect address. She paused. I am not comfortable with enforcing a writ of possession on this record. She looked at me. Do you have proof of current recorded ownership in your name? I pulled out the recorder's office printout. Judge Halprin scanned it. It shows the property was distributed to you through your grandfather's estate. Recorded last year. Then it shows a quitclaim deed 2 weeks ago, transferring it to your parents. She looked at me. And you're denying you signed that quitclaim? Yes. Judge Halprin stared at the deed exhibit, then at the notary block at the bottom. Her eyes narrowed. She tapped the notary commission number with her pen. Counsel, whose notary is this? Mr. Pike blinked. It appears to be a notary named Carla Mendez. Judge Halprin looked at my father. Mr. Ward, do you know Carla Mendez? My father's mouth opened, then closed. My mother answered, voice thin. She's a friend. A friend who notarized a deed transferring your daughter's inherited home to you 2 weeks ago. Mr. Pike tried again. Your Honor, the deed is recorded. It's presumptively valid. Judge Halprin didn't blink. Presumptively valid is not immune. She turned to the bailiff. I'm issuing an emergency stay of the writ of possession. Effective immediately. Notify the sheriff's civil unit. My lungs loosened in a quiet, controlled exhale. This is stayed pending a hearing on the motion to vacate default and a referral for potential fraud regarding the deed, Judge Halprin continued. Then she looked at me. Ms. Ward, if this deed is fraudulent, you need more than an eviction stay. You need to protect the title immediately. I know, I said. Good, because I'm ordering that the county recorder be notified of a potential fraudulent conveyance. Then she added, calm but final, and I want the notary to appear in person with her journal. My parents went still. Because a notary journal isn't a story. It's timestamps, signatures, IDs, thumbprints in some states. It's evidence. Hearing set for tomorrow morning. Ms. Ward, bring your employment access logs. Plaintiffs will bring the notary and the original deed. If anyone fails to appear, there will be consequences. My mother's lips parted, and for the first time, the concerned mask looked like what it was. Fear. Outside the courtroom, I answered Deputy Romero's call immediately. I got the stay. His relief was audible. Copy that. You text me a photo of the signed order. I'll notify civil and we'll stand down. Then my mother's voice came from behind me, low, urgent, no longer sweet. You think this ends it? You don't understand what you just started. I didn't turn around because I did understand. If the deed was fake, this wasn't about an eviction anymore. This was about how far my parents were willing to go to steal a dead man's gift from their own daughter. After texting Deputy Romero the stay order, I drove straight to the county recorder's office. I placed a fraud alert on my property record, a flag that wouldn't invalidate the deed automatically but placed a public notice that the conveyance was disputed. The clerk stamped my form, then did something that made my stomach tighten again. She zoomed in on the notary block and pointed out a digit in the commission number that had been crossed out and rewritten. That correction should have triggered a rejection, she said quietly. But it didn't. She printed it for me, warm, official pages my parents couldn't argue with later. When I pulled into my driveway, my parents' car was parked across the street again. I walked into my house, locked the door, and called my employer's security office. I requested badge access logs for the 13th, the day the deed was supposedly signed. They said they'd pull badge entries, parking gate logs, and preserve camera footage. That word, preserve, felt like protection. Then my doorbell rang. I didn't move toward the door. I moved toward my phone, opened my camera, and started recording. I spoke through the door without unlocking it. My mother demanded I open up. My father said they wanted to resolve this like family. I kept my tone flat. You filed an eviction against me. You forged a lease. You recorded a deed. That's not family. That's fraud. When I asked why, my father's answer was cold. Because Grandpa promised the house would stay in the family. And you were making decisions we didn't approve. I am the family, I said. You're ungrateful, my mother snapped. That man would have wanted us to have it. He didn't. That's why the deed is in my name. My father warned me the notary would say I signed. I told him the notary's journal would show what she claims she verified. My mother's voice turned sweet, too sweet. You don't want to ruin lives over paperwork, Tessa. That line told me everything. They weren't afraid of losing the house. They were afraid of what the paper trail would reveal. You already chose to ruin this, I said. I'm just making sure it's recorded correctly. I stopped speaking and didn't stop recording until I heard their car door shut. An hour later, my email pinged. The badge log showed me entering the building that morning and not leaving until after 6 p.m. No gap. No time to drive across town, sign a deed, and come back. Then another email, the fraud alert confirmation and the image showing the corrected notary commission number. I stacked the documents on my table like I was building a wall. Right before I closed my laptop, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. If you show up tomorrow, you'll lose more than a house. My skin went cold, not because I was scared, but because threats meant they knew what was coming. I screenshotted it, saved it, and forwarded it to myself with the subject line, "Threat received night before hearing." Then I went to sleep. Not peacefully, but I forced my body to rest because exhaustion makes you careless. And my parents had built their entire plan around me being too tired, too shocked, too alone to fight. At 8:45 the next morning, I walked back into Department 14 with a single folder and a calm face. My parents were already there with their attorney. My mother wore a slightly different cardigan like she believed costume changes reset the narrative. My father looked impatient. And sitting behind them, stiff posture, purse clutched tight, was the notary, Carla Mendez. She looked nothing like I'd expected. Not smug, not confident, just tense, like she'd been told to show up and repeat a line and was praying no one asked the wrong question. Judge Halpern took the bench with a sharper, less tolerant expression. We are here on the defendant's motion to vacate default and the court's concern regarding a recorded quitclaim deed. She looked at the notary. Ms. Mendez, you are a commissioned notary public in this state. Yes, Your Honor. And you notarized a deed transferring property from Tessa Ward to Mark and Diane Ward on the 13th. Carla swallowed. Yes. Then you will produce your notary journal. Mr. Pike spoke quickly. Your Honor, the journal is not necessary. Judge Halpern looked at him like he'd suggested she ignore gravity. Sit down. She kept her eyes on Carla. Journal, now. Carla's hands shook as she pulled out a small black book from her purse and held it like it weighed 10 pounds. It was carried to the judge. Judge Halpern flipped it open and the room went quiet in that way that makes every swallow sound loud. She ran a finger down the entries, then stopped. Ms. Mendez, please tell the court what identification you verified for Tessa Ward on the 13th. Her driver's license. Your journal entry lists a driver's license number ending in 931. Judge Halpern looked at me. Ms. Ward, what are the last 3 digits of your driver's license number, 617? Judge Halpern nodded once. Then she looked at Carla, and the calm in her voice became something dangerous. So the journal does not match the defendant's actual license, explain. Carla's lips parted and closed. Her eyes flicked toward my parents, just once, so small most people would have missed it. But Judge Halpern didn't miss anything. Mr. Pike stood up too fast. Your Honor, journals can contain clerical errors, enough. Judge Halpern read from the journal. This entry lists the signer as Tessa Ward, and under signature, there is a scribble that does not resemble the signature on the defendant's filings. She looked at Carla. Did you witness Tessa Ward sign this deed in your presence? Yes, Carla said, strained. Judge Halpern reached for my employer's access logs. Ms. Ward, you stated you were at work the entire day. Do you have documentation? I slid forward the badge logs and the security office certification email. Then I added the one thing people like my father always forget exists, my parking gate log with a time-stamped plate scan. Judge Halpern scanned the pages, her eyes narrowing at the timestamps. Ms. Mendez, at what time did you notarize this deed? Around noon. Judge Halpern turned to the log. The defendant's badge log shows her inside a secured building at noon with internal door access. Her parking gate log shows her vehicle inside the controlled garage. She did not leave. Carla's face tightened. Maybe it was later. Your journal lists the time as 12:15. So no, not later. Mr. Pike looked like he wanted to vanish. My mother's hands were clenched so tightly her fingers looked pale. My father stared straight ahead as if refusing to look at the evidence would stop it from existing. Judge Halpern set the journal down slowly. Ms. Mendez, are you familiar with the consequences of notarizing a signature you did not witness? Yes. Then I'm going to ask you one last time. Did you witness Tessa Ward sign this deed? Carla's mouth trembled. Her eyes darted to my parents. My mother shook her head, tiny, desperate. My father didn't move at all. Carla exhaled a shaky breath, and when she spoke, the lie finally collapsed under its own weight. No, she whispered. I didn't. The courtroom didn't explode. It just reset, like truth had flipped a switch and everything was now on a different circuit. Thank you, Judge Halpern said. That is all. My mother made a small sound, half gasp, half anger, then snapped her mouth shut. Mr. Pike stood. Your Honor, this is beyond the scope. Sit down. Judge Halpern looked at my parents. Mark Ward. Diane Ward. Stand. They stood slowly, like gravity had changed. This court is vacating the default judgment. The writ of possession is dissolved. The unlawful detainer is dismissed for lack of proper service and lack of standing. She continued. This court is referring the quitclaim deed to the district attorney for investigation of fraudulent conveyance and conspiracy, and referring the notary to the commissioning authority for potential revocation. Then she looked at me. Ms. Ward, you will obtain a certified copy of today's order and record it with the county recorder. You will also pursue a title correction through the proper civil channel. Based on what I've seen, you should consider an emergency restraining order as well. I will, I said. Then she delivered the line that made my parents finally look afraid. And if either plaintiff attempts any further action to remove you from that property, contact law enforcement immediately. This court's orders are not suggestions. Outside the courtroom, my parents didn't approach me. Mr. Pike avoided my eyes. Carla Mendez walked out the other direction, face pale. I went straight to the clerk's office. The stamp came down hard, thunk, again and again, certified, certified, certified. Then I drove to the county recorder's office and recorded the judge's order against the parcel record. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. One line, forget it. I screenshotted it anyway, because people like my parents don't stop because they grow a conscience. They stop because the doors close. Over the next few weeks, the consequences unfolded. The deed was flagged and under investigation. The notary's commission went under review. My employer preserved footage. The sheriff's civil unit added the dismissal to their system. And my parents, people who'd spent my whole life telling me the family name mattered, couldn't look me in the eye without seeing their own signatures on a lie. They never apologized. My mother sent one email trying to rewrite it as a misunderstanding. My father didn't send anything at all. But I didn't need apologies. I needed my house. And I needed my grandfather's gift to stay where he put it, with me, the person he trusted. One evening, I stood in the living room and looked at the sunlight coming through the windows my parents tried to steal by walking into court with forged paper. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt quiet. The kind of quiet you earn when you stop begging to be treated fairly and start forcing people to deal with facts. The fraud alert stayed on the property record until the title correction finished. I replaced the front door lock, installed a camera by the porch, and kept certified copies of the judge's order in a safe place. Not because I wanted to live in fear, but because I wanted to live in reality. My parents had proven they'd use institutions as weapons. I learned to use the same institutions as shields.